Michael Torres had driven the same routes for 6 years. He knew every pothole, every shortcut, every house that kept their porch lights on past midnight. He trusted his GPS the way pilots trust their instruments. Absolutely, without question. That trust nearly cost him everything. On a freezing December evening, his navigation system led him to an address that didn't exist, to a woman who wasn't supposed to be found, and to a truth that would turn a simple delivery into a life or death gamble. Some lies are told by people. Others are programmed into the machines we trust most.
Quick pause. Before we continue, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit subscribe, because tomorrow's episode is absolutely mind-blowing. The dashboard clock read 6:47 p.m. when Michael's scanner beeped with the final delivery of the day. He was already running late, his back ached from 12 hours of lifting boxes, and all he wanted was to get home to a hot shower and leftover pizza. The December cold had settled into his bones, making every movement feel sluggish and heavy. He pulled the van over to the shoulder of Route 14, the engine idling as he checked the details on his handheld device. One package, marked Urgent, destination 4782 Hendricks Road. The delivery window closed at 7:30. He had 43 minutes. Michael punched the address into his GPS. The screen flickered once, then displayed the route. 22 minutes away, heading northwest into the rural outskirts of the county. He'd been driving these roads for 6 years working for Carson Logistics, and he couldn't recall ever making a delivery to Hendricks Road. But the county was sprawling, full of back roads and isolated properties he'd only visited once or twice. He shifted the van into drive and followed the GPS's calm, feminine voice into the gathering darkness. The highway gave way to 2-lane country roads. Streetlights became sparse, then disappeared entirely. Bare trees lined both sides of the asphalt, their skeletal branches reaching toward the purple-gray sky. Michael turned up the heat, watching his breath fog in the cabin despite the blower running at full blast. The van's heater had been struggling all week, another thing maintenance kept promising to fix. His phone buzzed in the cup holder. A text from his girlfriend, Amanda. "Picking up dinner? Home by 8?" He typed back one-handed while steering with his knee, a skill he'd perfected over years of solo driving. "Hoping so. Last stop." The GPS interrupted. "In 800 feet, turn right onto Hendricks Road." Michael slowed, scanning for the turn. His headlights swept across a weathered street sign, barely visible against the darkness. Hendricks Road. He made the turn onto what was less a road and more a cracked ribbon of asphalt, pockmarked with potholes and bordered by overgrown vegetation. "Proceed 1.2 miles. Your destination will be on the left." The road narrowed further. No houses appeared in his headlights, no mailboxes, no driveways, just dense woods pressing in from both sides, the trees creating a tunnel effect that made Michael feel like he was driving into something rather than toward something. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. Something felt wrong that we couldn't articulate what. Just an instinct, a prickling at the base of his skull that made him check his mirrors more frequently than necessary. Arriving at destination in 500 feet. Michael leaned forward, peering through the windshield. Still nothing but trees and darkness. No buildings, no lights, no indication that anyone lived out here at all. Arriving at destination. He stopped the man in the middle of the road. His headlights illuminated nothing but an empty stretch of pavement, and to his left, a chain-link fence partially collapsed and overtaken by vines and dead weeds. Beyond the fence lay what appeared to be an abandoned lot, just dirt, scrub brush, and the skeletal remains of what might have once been a small building, now reduced to a concrete foundation and scattered debris. He grabbed his scanner and double-checked the address, 4782 Hendricks Road. He looked at the GPS. The blue dot representing his van sat directly on top of the red pin marking his destination. He grabbed his phone and tried calling the customer. The number rang 4 times, then went to a generic voicemail. He hung up without leaving a message and tried dispatch instead. The call connected, but the audio was garbled, fragmented by poor reception. "Dispatch? Carson. Hey, this is Michael, Unit 42. I'm at 4782 Hendricks Road, but there's no building here. Can you verify the address?" Static crackle to the speaker. "Reading, location confirmed. I can't hear you. The address is wrong, or the GPS is wrong. There's nothing here. More static, then the call dropped entirely. Michael checked his signal, 1 bar, flickering to no service and back again. He sat in the van, engine idling, heater blowing lukewarm air, and stared at the empty lot. Company policy was clear. If you couldn't deliver, you brought the package back to the depot and marked it as undeliverable. He'd done it dozens of times. But something about this situation gnawed at him. The package was marked urgent, someone needed it, presumably, and the GPS had led him here with absolute certainty, not to a nearby address, but to this exact spot. Michael killed the engine and grabbed his flashlight from the glove compartment. He'd at least look around for a mailbox, some indication of where the actual address might be. Maybe the GPS coordinates were slightly off and the real house was down a hidden driveway. The cold hit him like a physical force when he opened the door. He sipped his jacket to his chin, pulled on his gloves, and clicked on the flashlight. Its beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the collapsed fence and the overgrown lot beyond. He walked along the fence line, playing his light across the property. No buildings, no structures of any kind except that old foundation. No mailboxes, no address numbers, nothing. Then his flashlight caught something that made him stop. Fresh tire tracks. They were clear in the dirt just inside the fence line, cutting through the dead grass and heading toward the back of the property where the scrub brush grew thicker. Recent tracks, the edges still sharp, not yet eroded by weather or wind. Michael stood at the fence, his breath steaming in the cold air, and followed the tracks with his flashlight beam. They disappeared into the brush about 50 yards back, where the property dipped into what looked like a natural depression in the land. This was none of his business. He should get back in the van, mark the delivery as undeliverable, and go home. He had no obligation to investigate tire tracks on abandoned property. Every rational thought in his head told him to leave. But his feet started moving anyway. He found a section of fence where the chain link has separated completely from its posts, creating a gap wide enough to walk through. He stepped onto the property, following the tire tracks with his flashlight, his boots crunching on frozen ground. The tracks led him toward the back corner of the lot, where the vegetation grew denser. As he walked, he noticed other things. Cigarette butts scattered near the old foundation, relatively fresh, an empty motor oil container, scraps of duct tape clinging to dead weeds. Someone had been here recently. Multiple someones, probably.
The tire tracks curved around a thick stand of scrub oak and descended into that depression he'd noticed earlier. Michael followed, pushing through branches that grabbed at his jacket, his flashlight beam bouncing with each step. Then he saw it. The ground dropped away more steeply than he'd expected, creating a natural bowl in the earth about 15 feet deep and 30 feet across. And sitting at the bottom of that bowl, partially hidden by the depression's walls and the overhanging vegetation, was a building. Not abandoned, not a ruin. A small, windowless structure made of concrete blocks, maybe 20 feet by 30 feet, with a corrugated metal roof and a single steel door. A generator hummed quietly near one wall. A padlock hung from a heavy hasp on the door. Michael's heart began to pound. This wasn't an abandoned lot. This was something hidden, something someone very deliberately didn't want found from the road. He should leave. He should absolutely leave right now, get in his van, and call the police from somewhere with better cell reception. But as he stood at the edge of the depression, his flashlight beam playing across the concrete building, he heard something that froze him in place. A sound from inside the building. Muffled, barely audible over the generator's hum, but unmistakable. Someone was knocking. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Then silence, then 3 more knocks. The pattern repeated, desperate and rhythmic. Someone was inside that concrete building and they were knocking to get out. Michael's flashlight trembled in his hand as he descended into the depression, his boots sliding on loose dirt and dead leaves. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but that knocking continued, steady and desperate. Someone was trapped inside that concrete building, and he was the only person who knew they were there. He'd stumbled onto something he wasn't meant to find, led here by a GPS that shouldn't have brought him to an address that didn't exist. As he approached the steel door, the knocking stopped abruptly, replaced by a silence that felt like held breath. Michael reached for the padlock, and that's when he heard the voice, female, young, terrified, whisper through a crack in the door, "Please, he's coming back."
Michael dropped to his knees beside the door, pressing his face close to the gap between the door and its frame. "Hello? Can you hear me?" "Oh God! Oh, thank God!" The voice was hoarse, cracking with emotion. "Please, you have to get me out. He'll be back soon. He always comes back." Who's coming back? Michael examined the padlock. It was substantial, commercial grade. He wasn't breaking through it without tools. "I don't know his name. Please, just get me out. Do you have a phone? Call the police, please." Michael pulled out his phone. Still no signal. "I can't get reception here. Listen, I'm gonna get you out, okay? Just stay calm. How long have you been in there?" A pause, then, "I don't know. 3 days? 4? There's no light. I can't tell anymore." Michael's stomach churned. He stood and examined the door more carefully with his flashlight. The hinges were on the inside. He couldn't pop the pins. The hasp was bolted through the concrete block, solid and unmovable. His only option was the padlock itself. "I need to go back to my van and get tools," he said. "I'll be right back, I promise." "No, don't leave me. Please don't leave." The panic in her voice was palpable, raw. "I have to. I can't get this lock off without a bolt cutter or a pry bar. It's going to take me 5 minutes tops. I promise I'm coming back." "He could come back if he sees your van." "Then I'll move it. I'll hide it. But I'm getting you out. What's your name?" Another pause. "Sarah. Sarah Chen." "Okay, Sarah, I'm Michael. I'm gonna get you out of there. 5 minutes. Count to 300. I'll be back before you finish." He didn't wait for her response. He scrambled up the slope of the depression, branches whipping at his face, his flashlight beam bouncing wildly. His breath came in ragged gasps as he pushed through the scrub and ran across the lot toward his van. His mind raced as he ran. 3 or 4 days. Someone had kept a woman locked in that building for 3 or 4 days. This wasn't some weird squatter situation or urban exploration gone wrong. This was a prison. This was a kidnapping. He reached the van and yanked open the back doors. The cargo area was nearly empty, just the one package you'd come to deliver and his emergency kit. He pawed through the kit. First aid supplies, road flares, a crappy little folding shovel, a tire iron. The tire iron. Not ideal, but it might work. He grabbed it, slammed the doors, and was about to run back when headlights appeared in the distance, coming up Hendricks Road. Michael's blood turned to ice. He killed his flashlight and crouched beside the van, watching the headlights grow brighter. A vehicle was approaching, maybe half a mile away, moving slowly, as if the driver was looking for something. Looking for this place. Looking for the hidden building. Michael made a split-second decision. He jumped into the van, started the engine, and pulled forward 30 feet, positioning the vehicle behind a thick cluster of dead brush where it wouldn't be immediately visible from the road. He killed the lights in the engine and sat in complete darkness, his hand gripping the tire iron, his heart hammering against his ribs. The approaching vehicle slowed further. Michael could hear the engine now, a low diesel rumble. Through the brush, he caught glimpses of headlights passing, then the red glow of brake lights. The vehicle stopped on the road right where Michael had been parked minutes ago. A door opened. Michael heard boots on pavement, then the rattle of chain link. Someone had entered the property. Michael's hands shook. He had 2 choices: hide in the van and hope whoever that was didn't find him, or intercept them before they reached Sarah. But if he confronted them, he had no weapons beyond a tire iron, no backup, no cell signal to call for help. And if Sarah had been held for 3 or 4 days, whoever had taken her was dangerous, organized, and likely armed. The smart play was to hide, let them pass, then slip away and find somewhere with cell service to call the police. But that meant leaving Sarah. It meant letting whoever this was reach her first. It meant she'd still be trapped in that concrete box, maybe for days more, maybe forever. Michael looked down at the tire iron in his lap, at his trembling hands, at the darkness pressing against the windows. He was 34 years old, a delivery driver with bad knees and a mortgage he could barely afford.
He wasn't a fighter, he wasn't brave. He was just a guy trying to get through his shift and go home. But he thought about Sarah's voice through that door crack, the desperation and terror, the way she begged him not to leave. He took a deep breath, gripped the tire iron tighter, and opened the van door as quietly as he could. The cold air hit him again, but he barely felt it now. His senses sharpened, adrenaline flooding his system. He moved through the brush in a crouch, staying low, keeping his flashlight off. Moonlight filtered through the clouds, providing just enough illumination to navigate by. He could see a figure ahead, moving through the gap in the fence with a flashlight, heading toward the back of the property, heading toward the depression, heading toward Sarah. Michael followed, staying far enough back to remain unseen, but close enough to keep the figure in sight. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he could make out more details. A man, average height, wearing a heavy jacket and what looked like a baseball cap. The man moved with confidence, someone who knew exactly where he was going. The man descended into the depression, and Michael crept to the edge, peering down. The man's flashlight beam swept across the concrete building, then fixed on the steel door. Michael watched him pull keys from his pocket, approach the padlock. This was it. Once that door opened, Michael's advantage of surprise would be gone. If he was going to act, it had to be now. He started down the slope, moving as quietly as possible, but loose dirt betrayed him. Rocks clattered. The man spun around, his flashlight beam catching Michael full in the face. "Who the fuck are you?" The man's hand went to his belt, reaching for something. Michael didn't think. He charged, closing the distance in 3 strides, swinging the tire iron in a wide arc. The man dodged backwards, the iron missing his head by inches and clanging against the middle door with the sound like a bell being struck. The man's hand came up holding a pistol. Michael froze, the tire iron still raised, his entire body exposed and vulnerable. They stood there frozen in time, the only sound were the humming of the generator and Michael's ragged breathing. "Drop it," the man said. His voice was calm, controlled. Not angry, not surprised, almost bored. Michael let the tire iron fall. It hit the ground with a dull thud. "Now step back slowly." Michael raised his hands and took a step backwards, his mind racing through options and finding none. He just charged a man with a gun while armed with nothing but a tire iron. He made the stupidest, most reckless decision of his entire life. "Who are you?" the man asked again. "How did you find this place?" I'm just a delivery driver. My GPS brought me here. I was looking for an address, and I..."
Bullshit. Nobody's GPS brings them here. Who sent you? I'm telling the truth. I work for Carson Logistics. Check my van. It's right up there. I've got a package. Carson Logistics. The man's expression shifted, confusion flickering across his features. Then something else. Recognition. And with that recognition came anger. "You're the delivery." Michael's confusion must have shown on his face. The man laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You stupid son of a bitch. You're the delivery. The package was for you." "What are you talking about?" "The package in your van, the one marked urgent going to a fake address. It was meant to bring you here." The man gestured with the gun. "Someone wanted you found, or wanted you disappeared. Probably both." The words didn't make sense. Michael shook his head. "That's crazy. I'm nobody. I'm just a driver." "Then somebody has a serious problem with just a driver." The man studied him for a moment. "Though I'm betting you're not as innocent as you're pretending. Whose husband did you fuck? Whose money did you steal?" "Nobody's. I haven't done anything." A noise from inside the building interrupted them. Sarah, hearing voices, beginning to shout, "Help! Someone help me! I'm locked in here!" The man's eyes narrowed. "So, you already found her. Perfect. That simplifies things." He raised the gun, aiming it at Michael's chest. "You know what? I don't actually care who you pissed off or why they wanted you here. This is already complicated enough. I was supposed to move her tonight, but now I've got a witness and a delivery van to dispose of. So we're going to do this quick." A gunshot cracked through the night. But Michael felt nothing. No impact, no pain. He was still standing. The man in front of him staggered, his expression shifting from confidence to confusion to shock. He looked down at his chest, where a dark stain was spreading across his jacket. The pistol slipped from his hands. He fell to his knees, then pitched forward onto his face. Michael spun around, his heart exploding in his chest. A second figure stood at the edge of the depression, silhouetted against the night sky, holding a pistol that was still pointed at where the man had been standing. The figure descended the slope in quick, confident strides, and as they entered the glow of the fallen man's flashlight, Michael saw it was a woman, middle-aged, maybe 50, with short gray hair and sharp features. She wore dark clothing and moved with military precision. She kept her gun trained on the fallen man as she approached, kicked his pistol away from his hand, then knelt to check his pulse. Satisfied, she stood and finally looked at Michael. "Michael Torres?" Her voice was professional, clipped. Michael couldn't speak. He could only nod. "I'm Agent Sarah Vance, FBI. Are you injured?" "FBI?" Michael's voice came out as a croak. "What? How? Is there someone in the building?" "Yes, a woman, Sarah Chen. She's locked inside." Agent Vance holstered her weapon and picked up the man's keys from where he dropped them. She approached the door, found the right key, and unlocked the padlock. The door swung open, revealing darkness within. A young woman stumbled out, maybe 19 or 20, squinting against the flashlight's glare. She was thin, dirty, wearing clothes that looked like they'd been worn for days. She took 2 steps, her legs buckling, and Agent Vance caught her. "It's all right," Vance said softly. "You're safe now. Sarah Chen?" The young woman nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I need you to sit down. You're going into shock. Michael, give me your jacket." Michael shrugged out of his jacket with numb hands and passed it over. Vance wrapped it around Sarah Chen's shoulders and helped her sit against the building's wall. Then Vance pulled out a radio. "This is Vance. Subject is down. Repeat, subject is down. I need immediate medical and forensic units to my location. I'm sending coordinates now. Also advise Carson Logistics Depot that Unit 42 is secure." A voice crackled back. "Copy that. Units en route. ETA 20 minutes. Vance clipped the radio back to her belt and finally focused her full attention on Michael. "Sit down before you fall down." Michael sat, his legs giving out beneath him. He stared at the body of the man who'd been about to kill him seconds ago, at the young woman wrapped in his jacket, at the FBI agent who'd appeared from nowhere. "I don't understand any of this," whispered. Agent Vance holstered her weapon and sat down on the concrete foundation nearby, her eyes never leaving the scene. "The address that was sent to your dispatch tonight was fake. The GPS coordinates were deliberately programmed to bring you here. Someone wanted you at this location at this specific time. But who? Why? That is what I've been trying to figure out for the past 72 hours. Because 3 days ago, a young woman named Sarah Chen was reported missing, and 2 days ago we intercepted chatter about a delivery driver who'd stumbled into the wrong place at the wrong time. Someone set you up, Michael. Someone wanted you to find this place, or someone wanted you dead. And probably both. And I've been watching this location, waiting to see who showed up." Michael's mind spun. "You've been here for days? Just waiting?" "Not the whole time. We had eyes on the building remotely. When your van showed up on our surveillance, I moved in. I was in position before you even got out of your vehicle." She paused. "Derek Moss," she gestured at the body, "wasn't the patient type." "Derek Moss?" "Mid-level operator in a trafficking network. We've been tracking him for 8 months." Vance looked at Sarah Chen, who sat with her eyes closed, tears still streaming down her face. "Sarah, can you tell us who took you?" Sarah opened her eyes, focused on the body. She nodded slowly. "That's him. He said he was hiring for his restaurant. Met him at a job fair. He seemed normal, professional. Then—" "It's all right," Vance said gently. "We'll get your full statement at the hospital. You don't have to talk about it now." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Help was coming. Michael should have felt relief, but instead all he felt was a growing dread. Someone had sent him here. Someone had manipulated his GPS, his delivery schedule, his entire evening to bring him to this exact spot. And that someone was still out there. "Agent Vance," Michael said quietly, "has someone set me up? Are they going to try again?" Vance met him with his eyes, and in her expression, Michael saw the answer before she spoke.
I don't know, she admitted. But until we figure out who and why, you need to be very careful, because someone went through an enormous amount of effort to get you here tonight. And in my experience, people who go to that much trouble don't give up easily. The sirens grew deafening. Red and blue lights began to strobe through the trees, painting the depression in alternating colors. Police vehicles and an ambulance converged on Hendricks Road, responding to Agent Vance's call. Michael sat in the back of a police cruiser, a blanket around his shoulders, watching the organized chaos unfold. Agent Vance spoke with other federal agents who'd arrived, their faces grave as they examined Michael's van, his delivery scanner, his phone. Then Vance approached the cruiser with an expression that made Michael's stomach drop. "We've got a problem," she said. "The package you were sent to deliver, we opened it. You need to see what's inside."
Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Agent Vance led Michael through the cordoned-off crime scene to where his van sat. Its back doors opened, bathed in the harsh white light of portable work lamps. 2 more FBI agents stood nearby, both wearing latex gloves, both looking at Michael with expressions somewhere between suspicion and concern. The package sat on the van's bumper. It had been opened, the cardboard box split along its seams, its contents partially visible. "Before we proceed," Vance said, "I need to ask you some questions. When did you receive this delivery assignment?" Michael's throat was dry. "Tonight, around 6:45. It came through on my scanner as I was finishing my second-to-last stop." "And you didn't find that unusual? A last-minute urgent delivery to an address you'd never heard of?" "It happens sometimes. Rush orders, same-day deliveries. It's not that uncommon." "Who has access to your delivery schedule?" "What? I don't know. Dispatch, I guess. Probably logistics management. Maybe IT. Why?" Instead of answering, Vance nodded to one of the other agents, who carefully removed the contents of the package. A cell phone, a brand Michael didn't recognize, still in its packaging. A thumb drive, and a manila envelope. "We haven't opened the envelope yet," Vance said. "That's for you to do." Michael stared at the items laid out on the van's bumper. "I don't understand." "This package wasn't being delivered to anyone at 4782 Hendricks Road," Vance explained. "It was being delivered to you. The fake address is just a mechanism to get you here to this specific location at this specific time. Someone wanted you to find Sarah Chan. Or someone wanted Derek Moss to find you. Or someone wanted Derek Moss to find you." She picked up the manila envelope. "And someone wanted you to have whatever's in here." Michael took the envelope with shaking hands. His name was written on the front in neat typed letters, Michael Torres. He broke the seal and pulled out the contents. Photographs. At least a dozen of them, printed on standard photo paper. Michael's hands trembled as he looked through them, his confusion deepening with each image. The first showed a man in his 50s, overweight, wearing an expensive suit, getting into a Mercedes. Michael had never seen him before. The second showed the same man entering a building, some kind of office complex or hotel. The third showed the man with a young woman, maybe 18 or 19, Asian, pretty, looking uncomfortable. They were in what appeared to be a restaurant. The fourth, fifth, and sixth photographs were harder to look at. The same man, the same young woman, but now in a hotel room. The images were intimate, exploitative. The young woman's discomfort had transformed into something worse. Fear, resignation, dissociation. Michael flipped faster through the remaining photos, his stomach churning. More men, different men, all middle-aged and well-dressed. More young women, different women each time, all looking varying degrees of uncomfortable or afraid. Restaurants, hotels, office buildings. The final photograph made Michael's blood run cold. It showed Derek Moss, The man who now lay dead 20 yards away, standing with one of the well-dressed men shaking hands in front of that concrete building, the building where Sarah Chen had been held prisoner. Michael looked up at Agent Vance, unable to speak. She said, "Keep looking," quietly. Michael found a sheet of paper beneath the photographs, text printed in the same neat type as his name on the envelope. Michael Torres, your girlfriend, Amanda Chen, had an older sister named Lisa, 19 years old, promising art student, disappeared 4 years ago. Amanda doesn't know what happened to Lisa. Neither do the police. Neither does Lisa's mother, who died of a broken heart 18 months after her daughter vanished. But you're about to find out. The men in these photographs are clients. The women are merchandise. Derek Moss is a facilitator. The building at 4782 Hendricks Road is a way station, one of several where young women are held before being moved to their final destinations. Lisa Chen passed through that building 4 years ago. She never came out. We've been building a case against this trafficking network for 6 months. We have evidence, we have testimony, we have documentation. But we don't have the clients' identities. The men in these photographs are protected by layers of shell companies, encrypted communications, and expensive lawyers. They're untouchable through conventional investigation. You're going to make them touchable. The phone and thumb drive contain everything you need: client lists, transaction records, communications, bank transfers, enough evidence to destroy 24 powerful men and dismantle a trafficking operation that spans 5 states. The FBI can't use this evidence. It wasn't obtained legally. If they try, everything gets thrown out and everyone walks free. But you can use it. You can leak it. You can post it online. Make it public in ways the FBI never could. You can do what the law cannot. We brought you here tonight because we needed you to understand what's at stake. We needed you to see the building where Lisa spent her last days. We needed you to meet another girl who might have suffered Lisa's fate if not for your intervention. We needed you to care enough to act. Derek Moss is already dead. His fate was sealed the moment he touched that building tonight. But the men who pay people like Derek, the men who bought Lisa and girls like her, they're still free, still operating, still destroying lives. Make a choice, Michael. Take the evidence and use it, or give it to the FBI and watch it disappear into an evidence locker while lawyers argue about admissibility for the next decade. But make it fast. We estimate you have 48 hours before the network realizes Derek is dead and starts destroying evidence. After that, those men are ghosts. The timer is already running. The paper slipped from Michael's fingers, fluttering to the ground. He looked at Agent Vance, at the other FBI agents watching him, at the package on the bumper. Amanda's sister, Lisa, Agent Vance said, "We've been aware of the Lisa Chen case for about 3 months. She's part of our investigation into the trafficking network. We believe she was taken by Derek Moss 4 years ago, held at this location, then transported out of state. After that, we don't have confirmed information about what happened to her."
But this letter says, the letter makes claims we can't verify. Vance's voice was professional, distant. And I need to be very clear with you, Michael. The FBI did not send you that package. We did not write that letter. We did not collect that evidence illegally. Do you understand what I'm saying? Michael stared at her. You're saying someone else did this? Someone who's not FBI? I'm saying the FBI's investigation is ongoing and bound by federal law. Whatever evidence might be on that thumb drive, if it was obtained without proper warrants and legal procedure, we cannot use it. She held his gaze. But I can't stop a civilian from receiving a package. I can't stop that civilian from doing whatever they feel is appropriate with the contents. You want me to leak it? I want you to make your own decision about what to do with information that was sent to you. As a federal agent, I can neither encourage nor discourage any particular course of action. Her expression softened slightly.
As someone who's been working this case for 8 months, watching these men operate with impunity, unable to touch them because they've insulated themselves so thoroughly, I want justice, however it comes. One of the other agents stepped forward, a younger woman with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. This is highly irregular, Agent Vance. Noted, Agent Morrison. Vance didn't look away from Michael. If he releases that evidence and it compromises our investigation, then our investigation was already compromised. These men have too much protection, too many resources. We both know the chances of getting convictions through traditional channels are minimal. Vance finally broke eye contact with Michael and addressed her colleague. Sometimes the law isn't enough. Sometimes justice requires other avenues. Morrison shook her head but didn't argue further. Michael picked up the litter from the ground and read it again. His mind struggled to process everything. Amanda's sister, the older sister she rarely talked about, whose disappearance had devastated her family. The sister's empty bedroom in her mother's house had become a shrine, untouched, waiting for someone who would never come home. Lisa had been caught in this network, held in that concrete building, transported somewhere unknown, and these men, the men in the photographs, had paid for it. Does Amanda know? Michael asked quietly. About any of this? No. And we'd prefer to keep it that way until we have more concrete information about her sister's fate. That's your decision to make, obviously. But for what it's worth, giving someone hope and then taking it away can be more cruel than leaving them in uncertainty. Michael thought about Amanda, about how she'd mentioned Lisa only a few times in the 3 years they'd been together, how she'd changed the subject quickly, her eyes going distant and sad, how she told him once late at night after too much wine that not knowing was the worst part, not knowing if Lisa was alive or dead, suffering or free, whether she'd run away or been taken. Now Michael knew, at least partially, and he held in his hands the power to do something about it. Who sent this? The letter says we, but it's not the FBI. So who? Vance exchanged glances with Morrison, then sighed. We have suspicions. There's been an activist group operating in this space for about 2 years. Vigilantes, essentially. They identified trafficking operations, gather evidence through illegal means, then tried to expose the perpetrators publicly. They call themselves the Remnant. We've been aware of them, but they're extremely careful. No digital footprint, no traceable communications. And you think they sent me this? The methodology fits. They've done similar operations before, engineering situations where civilians discover evidence that law enforcement can't legally use, then letting those civilians decide what to do with the contents. It creates plausible deniability and bypasses legal restrictions. It's also extremely dangerous. They've had 2 members disappear in the past year. We believe the trafficking networks they've been targeting killed them. Michael looked at the phone and thumb drive, still sealed in their packaging. So if I use this evidence, I'm putting myself at risk. Potentially, yes. These men have resources. They've demonstrated willingness to kill to protect their operations. If you expose them and they trace it back to you, Vance didn't finish the sentence. But if I don't use it, they keep operating. They keep hurting people. And Lisa's case stays cold. That's the calculation. Michael picked up the sealed phone. Through the clear packaging, he could see it was a basic model, the kind sold at convenience stores with prepaid minutes, untraceable, designed to be used once and thrown away. 48 hours, the letter said. 48 hours before the network realized Derek was dead and started covering their tracks. Michael looked at Sarah Chen, not Amanda's sister, but the girl he'd actually saved tonight being loaded into an ambulance. She was alive because he'd followed his GPS to a place he wasn't supposed to be, because he'd investigated when the smart thing would have been to turn around and leave. How many other girls were there? How many Lisas and Sarahs, trapped in buildings like this one, waiting for someone to find them? I need to think, Michael said. Vance nodded. Take the package. It's addressed to you. Legally, it's yours. What you do with it is your choice. She pulled out a business card and handed it to him. My direct line. If you decide to move forward with this and you need any kind of support, even if it's just information we can legally share, call me. Michael pocketed the card and gathered the items from the package, placing them back in the box. The photographs, the letter, the phone, the thumb drive, a bomb in cardboard packaging. Can I go? He asked. We'll need a full statement eventually, but it can wait until tomorrow. You've been through enough tonight. She gestured to one of the uniformed officers. Officer Chen will drive you home. We'll need to keep your van for a few days. Evidence processing. Chen? Michael looked at the officer. A young Asian man. Any relation? Different Chen. It's a common name. But no relation to either of them. Michael carried the box toward the patrol car, his legs feeling unsteady, his mind reeling. As he walked, he passed the covered body of Derek Moss, a man who'd been alive an hour ago, a man who'd been about to kill him, a man who'd destroyed countless lives. Dead now because someone had set up an elaborate trap and used Michael as bait. The patrol car's interior smelled of disinfectant and old coffee. Michael sat in the back, the box on his lap, and gave Officer Chen his address. As they pulled away from the scene, Michael looked back at the flashing lights, the crime scene tape, the concrete building where Sarah had been held a prisoner.
Where Lisa had been held prisoner. His phone buzzed. Amanda, getting worried, you okay? Michael stared at the message. What could he possibly say? That he'd stumbled into a trafficking operation? That her sister had been there 4 years ago? That he now held evidence that could destroy the men responsible, but might also get him killed? He typed back, long night, complications with a delivery. Heading home now. Love you. The patrol car merged onto the highway, leaving the rural darkness behind. Streetlights began to appear, then buildings, then the familiar landmarks of Michael's neighborhood. Normal life reasserting itself. But nothing felt normal anymore. Officer Chen pulled up in front of Michael's apartment building. You going to be okay? He asked, genuine concern in his voice. I don't know, Michael admitted. Honestly, I have no idea. For what it's worth, what you did tonight, going to that building, trying to help that girl, that took guts. Most people would have driven away. Most people would have been smarter than me. Chan smiled. Maybe, but that girl's alive because you weren't smart. Sometimes stupid and brave look the same from the outside. Michael got out of the car, thanked the officer, and walked toward his building, the box tucked under his arm. He climbed the stairs to his third-floor apartment, his footsteps echoing in the stairwell, his mind 1,000 miles away. He unlocked the door to find Amanda on the couch, her laptop open, a documentary playing on mute. She looked up, relief flooding her face. Jesus, Michael, I was starting to imagine all kinds of... She stopped, taking in his appearance. What happened? You look terrible. Michael set the box down on the kitchen counter and pulled Amanda into a hug, holding her tighter than usual, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. Rough delivery, he said into her shoulder. Really rough. She pulled back, studying his face. Are you hurt? Did something happen? I'm okay. Just, it was a weird night. I had to talk to the police. The police? Michael, what? Someone was lost in the woods near one of my delivery locations. I helped them get out, called for help. It turned into this whole thing. The lie came easier than he'd expected, smooth and practiced. I'll tell you about it, but can I just hold you for a minute? Amanda's expression softened. She led him to the couch, and they sat together, her head on his chest, his arms wrapped around her. The documentary played silently on the screen. Something about ocean life, jellyfish pulsing through dark water. Michael thought about the box on the counter, about the choice waiting for him inside it, about Lisa, Amanda's sister, whose disappearance had created a wound that never fully healed, about Sarah Chen, who would have died in that concrete building if he hadn't stumbled upon it, about the men in the photographs, living their comfortable lives, destroying people without consequence. 48 hours. I love you, he said quietly. Amanda tilted her head up, surprised by the sudden declaration. I love you too. You sure you're okay? Yeah, I'm okay. But as he held her, staring at the box on the counter, he knew he was standing at a crossroads. One path led to safety, to normal life, to staying out of something that could get him killed. The other path led into darkness and danger, but maybe, toward justice. He had until morning to decide which path to take. Michael didn't sleep.
He lay in bed next to Amanda, listening to her breathe, watching shadows move across the ceiling, his mind replaying the night in endless loops. At 4 a.m., he gave up pretending and moved to the kitchen, making coffee in the dark. The box sat where he'd left it, innocent and terrible. He opened his laptop and began researching the men in the photographs, just their faces, no names yet. Within an hour, he'd identified 3 of them: a state senator, a CEO of a medical supply company, and a real estate developer who'd been featured in Forbes. Powerful men, connected men, men who could make problems disappear. At 5:30 a.m., his phone rang, an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. A woman's voice, digitally distorted. "You have 24 hours left, Michael. After that, the evidence becomes worthless. They'll have already run. Choose wisely."
Michael sat at his kitchen table, staring at his phone, his coffee growing cold beside him. The distorted voice echoed in his mind. 24 hours. Not 48 like the letter had said. The timeline had accelerated. He opened the box again, pulled out the prepaid phone and broke the seal. The device powered on immediately, already charged, already set up. No personal information, no way to trace it back to anyone. He stared at it for a long moment, then picked up the thumb drive. Everything changed when you looked at evidence. Once you knew, you couldn't unknow. Once you saw, you couldn't unsee. Michael plugged the thumb drive into his laptop. The file directory opened. Spreadsheets, photographs, video files, scanned documents. Hundreds of files, meticulously organized. Client lists with initials and encrypted notes. Bank transfers tracked through multiple accounts. Communication logs, travel itineraries, hotel reservations. And photographs. So many photographs. Michael forced himself to look through them systematically, documenting each face, each location. The men were all professionals: doctors, lawyers, businessmen, politicians, ages ranging from 40s to 70s, well-groomed, well-dressed, wearing wedding rings in some photos. The women were young, almost always between 18 and 25. Different ethnicities, different backgrounds, but all sharing the same expression: fear masked by forced compliance. One folder was labeled Waystation 4782. Michael's hand shook as he opened it. Photographs of the concrete building, interior shots showing a single room with a mattress on the floor, a bucket in the corner, heavy chains bolted to the wall. More photographs of different women in that room, taken over what appeared to be several years. The dates were stamped on each image. Michael scrolled through them, his stomach churning, until he found one dated 4 years ago. A young woman, Asian, 19 years old, sitting on that mattress, her face showing a mixture of terror and defiance. Dark hair, delicate features, eyes that looked too old for her face. Michael had seen those eyes before, in photographs at Amanda's mother's house. In the framed picture Amanda kept in her bedroom drawer, hidden away because looking at it hurt too much. Lisa Chen. Michael's hand went to his mouth. He sat there for a long moment, unable to move, unable to look away from the photograph. This was real. This had happened. Lisa had been in that building, chained to that wall, held prisoner by Derek Moss while he arranged her transport to whatever hell came next. He scrolled further. More photographs of Lisa over what appeared to be a 3-day period. Then nothing. She disappeared from the records after that, transported out of state according to a spreadsheet entry. Destination, Chicago. Client, RH. Status, permanent placement. Permanent placement. Michael felt bile rise in his throat. He pushed away from the table, made it to the bathroom, and vomited into the toilet. He stayed there on the cold tile floor, his body shaking, his mind refusing to process what permanent placement meant in this context. Amanda's voice came from the bedroom. "Michael, you okay?" "Yeah, just think I ate something bad yesterday."
Go back to sleep.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm okay. He waited until he heard the bedroom door close, then returned to the kitchen. The laptop screen had gone dark. He touched the trackpad, bringing Lisa's photograph back into view. He couldn't tell Amanda. Not yet. Not until he knew more. Not until he could give her something more than horror and uncertainty. He closed the folder and opened the client files. The initials were coded, but cross-referencing them with the financial records and travel itineraries made identification possible. It would take time, but it could be done. R.H. Robert Harrison? Richard Hunt? He opened the financial records and traced transactions associated with those initials. A payment of $50,000, wired through 3 shell companies, ending at an LLC registered in Delaware. Michael pulled up the Delaware Corporate Registry website and began searching. It took 40 minutes and 3 different databases, but he finally found it. Riverside Holdings, LLC. Registered agent? Richard Holbrook. A quick Google search brought up results. Richard Holbrook, 62, senior partner at Holbrook & Associates, one of Chicago's most prestigious law firms. Married, 3 children, 2 grandchildren. Board member of several charities, including one focused on at-risk youth. At-risk youth. Michael felt anger burn through the numbness. This respected lawyer had paid $50,000 for permanent placement of a 19-year-old trafficking victim, had probably destroyed Lisa Chen. And he went home to his family every night, attended charity galas, lived a life of comfort and respect. He looked at the clock. 6:15 a.m. Amanda would be up in 45 minutes, getting ready for work. He needed to make a decision before then. The distorted voice had given him 24 hours. But once Amanda woke up, once he had to look her in the eye and pretend everything was normal, the choice became harder. He thought about Agent Vance's words. Sometimes the law isn't enough. Sometimes justice requires other avenues. He thought about Sarah Chan, alive because he'd made a choice to investigate instead of turn away. He thought about Lisa, destroyed because no one had found her in time. Michael picked up the prepaid phone. No contacts, no call history, just a clean device waiting to be used. He opened the browser and began creating anonymous email accounts, using a VPN service he downloaded through a proxy server. Layer after layer of digital obfuscation, making himself untraceable. He was doing this. He was actually doing this. He spent the next 2 hours organizing the evidence, creating compressed files, writing summaries, documenting connections. He compiled lists of journalists who'd covered trafficking cases before, major news outlets, independent investigators known for handling sensitive information.
By the time Amanda emerged from the bedroom, showered and dressed for work, Michael had everything ready to send. He just hadn't pressed the button yet. "Feeling better?" Amanda asked, kissing his cheek as she poured coffee. "Yeah, must have been a 24-hour thing." "You look exhausted. Did you sleep at all?" "Not much. Too wired from yesterday." "You still haven't told me what really happened." She sat across from him, concern in her eyes. "And don't say it was just a lost person in the woods. I know you, Michael. Something's wrong." Michael met her gaze. He saw Lisa's eyes looking back at him, the same shape, the same color, family resemblance undeniable. And he made a decision. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly, "but I need you to let me tell you all of it before you react, okay?" Amanda's expression shifted to alarm. "You're scaring me." "I know, just trust me. Let me tell you everything, and then we'll figure out what to do." He told her, not everything. He left out the specific photographs, the details that would haunt her, but he told her about the fake address, the concrete building, finding Sarah Chen, Derek Moss, the FBI. And then, carefully, gently, he told her about Lisa. Amanda's face went through stages: confusion, disbelief, horror, grief. She sat very still, her coffee cup forgotten in her hands as Michael explained what he'd found on the thumb drive. When he finished, silence filled the kitchen.
Amanda stared at the wall, tears streaming down her face, not bothering to wipe them away. "She was there," Amanda whispered finally, "in that building. The same building where you found that girl last night?" "Yes." "And then they sold her to someone in Chicago?" "That's what the records indicate." "Is she alive?" Michael had been dreading this question. "I don't know. The records don't say what happened after she arrived in Chicago, just that it was permanent placement." "Which means what?" "I don't know." Michael lied because he did know, or at least suspected, and he couldn't bring himself to put it into words. Amanda set down her coffee cup with shaking hands. "Who did this? Who bought her?" Michael hesitated, then pulled up Richard Holbrook's photograph on his laptop. "This man," according to the financial records. Amanda stared at the picture. A distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit, smiling at a charity event. "He looks so normal." "They all do." "How many?" "How many what? How many men like this? How many people involved in this?" Michael gestured to the thumb drive. "At least 24 clients. Probably more. These are just the ones with documented transactions. And the network extends across 5 states, according to the FBI. Amanda stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. She walked to the window, looking out at the morning traffic, at normal people going about their normal lives. "We have to tell the police, the FBI. They have to arrest these people." "They can't. The evidence was obtained illegally. If they try to use it, it gets thrown out of court. The lawyers will argue illegal search and seizure, and everyone walks free." "Then what's the point? Why send you this evidence if no one can use it?" Michael picked up the prepaid phone. "Because the law can't use it, but I can. We can. We can leak it. Send it to journalists, post it online, make it public. These men can't be prosecuted, but they can be exposed, destroyed professionally, socially, their names attached forever to what they did." Amanda turned from the window. "And if you do that, what happens to you?" "I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe they trace it back to me. Maybe—" He didn't finish. "Maybe they kill you." Agent Vance said it's possible. Amanda closed her eyes. "So my choices are, let the men who destroyed my sister walk free, or risk losing you?" "It's not your choice. It's mine. But I wanted you to know, to understand why I'm going to do it." "You've already decided." "Yes." Amanda was quiet for a long moment. Then she opened her eyes and walked back to the table, sitting down across from him. "Then I'm helping." "Amanda, you don't get to make this decision alone. This is my sister, my family. If you're taking this risk, I'm taking it with you. I'm trying to protect you. By keeping me ignorant, by making choices about my sister's life without including me." Amanda's voice was steady despite the tears on her face. "No, we do this together, or we don't do it at all." Michael looked at her, at the determination in her expression, and realized he'd underestimated her. Amanda had lived with Lisa's disappearance for 4 years. She had carried that grief, that uncertainty, and it had never broken her. She was stronger than he had given her credit for. "Okay," he said finally. "Together." They spent the next hour going through the evidence together. Michael walking Amanda through what he'd found, answering her questions, helping her understand the scope of what they were dealing with. Amanda cried several times, but she didn't look away. She forced herself to see it all. "What do we do first?" she asked. Michael pulled up his list of contacts. "We send everything to people who can amplify it. Journalists, investigators, activists. We flood multiple channels simultaneously so it can't be contained or suppressed. Once it's out there forever." "And the FBI?" "Agent Vance will know what we did. She might even be expecting it, but officially they won't be involved." Amanda nodded. "Do it." Michael's finger hovered over the send button. Once he pressed it, there was no taking it back, no undoing what would follow. He'd be crossing a line from which there was no return. He thought about Lisa Chen, 19 years old, her whole life ahead of her, destroyed by the men whose information sat in these files. He thought about Sarah Chen, who almost suffered the same fate. He thought about all the girls who weren't as lucky, who'd never been found, whose families would never know what happened to them.
He pressed send. The files uploaded in seconds, distributed across dozens of recipients, major newspapers, online news outlets, independent journalists, bloggers who specialized in investigative reporting, true crime podcasters, civil rights organizations. Michael's phone buzzed almost immediately. Agent Vance. "Don't answer it," Amanda said. "I have to." Michael picked up. "Agent Vance." "Michael, I am assuming the rapid deployment of encrypted files from an anonymous account in the last 60 seconds was not you." "I don't know what you're talking about." A pause, then a quiet laugh. "Of course you don't. Well, whoever sent those files, they just started what's going to be the biggest trafficking scandal to break in a decade. Multiple news outlets already have reporters calling their sources. It'll hit the public by noon." "Good," Michael said quietly. "You understand there will be consequences." "I understand." "Watch your back, Michael. These men won't go quietly. They'll try to identify the source, and they have resources we can only imagine." "I'll be careful." "Keep that number I gave you. Call if you need anything. And Michael," Vance paused, "for what it's worth, you did the right thing." The call ended. Michael set down the phone and looked at Amanda. "It's done." She reached across the table and took his hand. "What happens now?" "Now we wait. We see how the world reacts, and we hope we survive it." Outside the window, the morning sun climbed higher, casting light across the city. Traffic flowed, people walked to work, life continued in its ordinary patterns. But for Michael and Amanda, everything had changed. The evidence was out there now, spreading through digital networks, being downloaded and examined by dozens of journalists and investigators. Within hours, it would explode into public consciousness. Names would be named, lives would be destroyed. And somewhere, the men in those photographs were waking up to their last day of comfortable anonymity. The story broke at 11:47 a.m. Michael and Amanda watched it happen in real time on Amanda's laptop, sitting on their couch, barely breathing. First, a respected investigative journalist tweeted, "Breaking, major trafficking network exposed. Evidence shows dozens of prominent figures involved. Full story coming." Within 10 minutes, 3 major news outlets published articles simultaneously. The names started appearing: the state senator, the CEO, the real estate developer. By noon, #trafficker list was trending worldwide. Michael's phone buzzed. Unknown number again. He answered, the same distorted voice. "You did well, but you're not done yet. Check your email, the personal one, not the anonymous accounts. You'll find something interesting. Richard Holbrook wants to meet you." Before Michael could respond, the line went dead. His blood ran cold. How did they know his personal email? How did Holbrook know about him? And why did a man whose life was currently being destroyed want to meet the person responsible?
The email was waiting when Michael checked. Sender address, truthmatters2024@protonmail.com. Subject line, final piece of the puzzle. Michael opened it, with Amanda reading over his shoulder. "Michael Torres, you've done what we hoped you would. The evidence is public, the network is exposed, and justice, however imperfect, is beginning to manifest. But there's one thing you don't know yet. One piece of information we couldn't include in the package because you had to come to it honestly. Richard Holbrook wants to meet you, not because he's angry or seeking revenge, but because he has information about Lisa Chen. Information that will change everything. He'll be at the Grand Hotel, downtown, room 847 at 3 p.m. today. He'll be alone. He won't be armed. He just wants to talk. This is the last ask. After this, you're done. You can walk away and live your life. But if you want answers about what really happened to Lisa, this is your only chance." Holbrook's life is already over. His name is destroyed, his career finished, his family abandoned him within an hour of the story breaking. He has nothing left to lose and nothing to gain by lying to you. The choice, as always, is yours, the remnant. Michael read the email 3 times, his mind racing. This is insane. They want me to meet with one of the traffickers? Is it a trap? Amanda asked. I don't know. Maybe. Probably. Michael pulled up the news coverage on his phone. Richard Holbrook's name was everywhere now, his photograph appearing in article after article. Chicago lawyer implicated in trafficking scandal. Senior partner accused of purchasing trafficking victim. Holbrook's firm released statement, no comment pending investigation. The man's life was indeed over. By morning, he'd been a respected attorney. By afternoon, he was a pariah. Why would he want to meet, Amanda wondered. What could he possibly have to say? Michael thought about the remnant's message. Information that will change everything. Maybe he wants to confess. Maybe he wants to explain. Maybe, he paused. Maybe he wants to tell us what happened to Lisa. Amanda's hand tightened on his arm. Do you trust these people, the remnant? I don't know. They've been right about everything so far. They knew about the trafficking network. They knew about Derek Moss. They knew about Lisa. And they said this is the last ask. After this, we're done. If you go, I'm going with you. Amanda, don't argue. If there's information about Lisa, I need to hear it. I deserve to hear it. Michael couldn't argue with that. He checked the time, 1:15 p.m. They had less than 2 hours to decide. He called Agent Vance. Michael, I was wondering when I'd hear from you. I got an email from the remnant. They want me to meet Richard Holbrook today in a hotel downtown. A long pause. That's a spectacularly bad idea. They say he has information about Lisa Chen. It's a trap. It has to be. These men are desperate right now. They're looking for someone to blame, someone to punish. If you walk into that hotel room, what if it's not a trap? What if he really does know something? Vance sighed. Even if he does, it's not worth your life. Let us handle Holbrook. We're already building a case, interviewing witnesses. We'll get whatever information he has. Will you? Or will his lawyer shut him down before he says anything useful? The remnant thinks he wants to talk, that he has nothing left to lose. The remnant is using you, Michael. They've been using you from the beginning. You've served your purpose. You released the evidence. Now they want you to do something else, something that benefits their agenda. Don't let them manipulate you into a situation you can't control. Michael knew she was right, but he also knew that if he didn't go, he'd never know what Holbrook might have said. He'd spend the rest of his life wondering if he'd missed his chance to learn Lisa's fate. What if you were there, in the hotel, not in the room, but nearby, monitoring? If something goes wrong, you could intervene. Michael, please, I need to know what happened to her. Amanda needs to know. If there's even a chance Holbrook can tell us something, I have to take it. Another long silence. If I do this, and I'm not saying I will, you wear a wire, you follow my instructions exactly, and the moment I tell you to leave, you leave. No arguments, no negotiations. Understood? Understood. Meet me at the Starbucks 2 blocks from the Grand at 2:15. And Michael, if this goes sideways, if Holbrook or anyone threatens you, you get out of there immediately. Your life is worth more than answers about a cold case. The call ended. Amanda had been listening to Michael's side of the conversation. She's going to help? She's going to be there. I'll be wired. If anything goes wrong, she can get to me fast. We'll be wired, Amanda corrected. I'm still coming. Michael started to argue, then stopped. Amanda had every right to be there, more right than he did. Okay, he agreed. We do this together. They spent the next hour preparing. Michael printed out some of the most damning documents from the thumb drive, evidence directly linking Holbrook to Lisa's case. If Holbrook tried to deny his involvement, Michael wanted to be able to confront him with proof. At 2 p.m., they left the apartment and drove downtown. The city felt different now, charged with an energy Michael couldn't quite name. Or maybe it was just his own paranoia, his hyper-awareness that he'd made himself a target. He parked 3 blocks from the Starbucks, and they walked the rest of the way. The December cold bit at exposed skin, wind whipping between buildings. Christmas decorations hung from lampposts, cheerful and incongruous.
Agent Vance was waiting at a corner table, dressed in civilian clothes, a coffee in front of her. Michael and Amanda sat down across from her. "Last chance to back out," Vance said without preamble. "We're going," Amanda replied, before Michael could speak. Vance studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right, here's how this works." She pulled out 2 small devices, each about the size of a button.
These are audio transmitters. Clip them to your clothing, somewhere they won't be visible but won't be muffled. I'll be able to hear everything you hear." Michael and Amanda each took a transmitter, attaching them to their collars. "I'll be in room 845, 2 doors down from Holbrook. I'll have the door cracked. If you need me, just say, 'red light,' and I'll be there in seconds." Vance pulled out her phone and showed them a map of the hotel floor. "Holbrook's room is here. There's only one entrance. The elevator is here, stairs are here. If you need to run, take the stairs. Elevators can be trapped." "You really think this is that dangerous?" Michael asked. "I think you're walking into a room with a man whose life you just destroyed. I think he might be alone, or he might have help waiting. I think the remnant has their own agenda, and we don't fully understand what it is. So yes, I think you should assume danger." Amanda's face was pale but determined. "What about Lisa? Is there any chance Holbrook actually knows what happened to her?" "There's a chance," Vance admitted. "The financial records show he paid for her. The question is whether he'll admit it, and if he does, whether he'll tell you what happened after. People like Holbrook usually try to minimize, to justify. They don't like to think of themselves as monsters." "But they are," Amanda said quietly. "Yes, they are." Vance checked her watch. "It's 2:45. The meet is at 3. I'm going up now to get into position. Give me 10 minutes, then come up. Room 847. Knock twice, identify yourselves, and wait for him to let you in. Do not enter if anything feels wrong. Trust your instincts." She stood, left cash on the table for her coffee, and walked out. Michael and Amanda sat in silence, watching the seconds tick by on the coffee shop's wall clock. Around them, people ordered lattes and chatted about their days, normal people, living normal lives, unaware that 2 of the cafe's customers were about to confront a human trafficker. At 2:55, they stood and walked to the Grand Hotel. The lobby was grand in that old money way, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, expensive furniture that'd been placed by professional designers to look casually elegant. A few guests moved through the space, pulling luggage, checking phones, living their lives. Michael and Amanda took the elevator to the 8th floor. The doors opened onto a quiet hallway, carpeted in deep red, lit by wall sconces that cast everything in warm amber tones. Room 847 was halfway down the hall. They stood in front of the door, Michael's hand raised to knock, both of them frozen in this moment of possibility and danger. "You ready?" he asked Amanda. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Michael knocked twice. "Mr. Holbrook, it's Michael Torres and Amanda Chen." Footsteps approached from inside. A pause, probably Holbrook checking through the peephole, then the sound of a lock disengaging, a security chain sliding free. The door opened. Richard Holbrook looked nothing like his photographs. The distinguished lawyer who'd smiled confidently at charity galas was gone, replaced by a man who'd aged years and hours. His expensive suit was rumpled, his tie loosened, his eyes red-rimmed and hollow. He looked like he hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, hadn't stopped moving since the story broke. "Come in," he said, his voice rough. "Quickly." They entered the hotel room. It was a standard corporate suite, king bed, desk, sitting area with couch and chairs. The curtains were drawn, making the space dim despite the afternoon hour. Holbrook closed and locked the door behind them. Michael's hand instinctively went to his pocket, where he'd stashed his phone. Amanda stayed close to his side. Holbrook gestured to the couch. "Please, sit." He took one of the chairs across from them, maintaining distance. "I assume you're recording this, either on your phones or with wires. I don't care. In fact, I prefer it. I want there to be a record." "A record of what?" Amanda asked, her voice steady despite her fear. Holbrook looked at her, really looked at her, and something crumpled in his expression. "You're Lisa's sister. I can see it. You have her eyes." Amanda's breath caught. "You remember her eyes?" "I remember everything about her. That's why I can't sleep. That's why when Michael here, when the evidence went public, my first reaction wasn't anger or fear. It was relief." "Relief," Michael repeated flatly. "Yes, relief that it was finally over, that I wouldn't have to carry this anymore." Holbrook stood abruptly, paced to the window, then back. "I know what you think of me. what the world thinks of me now, monster, predator, criminal. And you're right. All of it is right. But I need you to understand something before we go any further. Understand what? Amanda's voice was cold. That you had a good reason to destroy my sister? No, there's no good reason. There's no justification. I need you to understand that I'm about to tell you things that will hurt, things that might make you wish you'd never come here. And I need you to know that I'm telling you because it's the only decent thing I've done in 4 years. Michael felt his pulse quicken. What happened to Lisa? Holbrook sat back down heavily. She's alive. The words hung in the air. Amanda made a sound like she'd been punched. She's alive, Amanda repeated. Where? Here, in Chicago. She's been here the whole time. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands. I'm going to show you something. It's going to be difficult to see, but you need to see it to understand. He turned the phone toward them. A photograph filled the screen.
A woman in her early 20s, sitting at a kitchen table laughing at something off camera. Asian, pretty, with shoulder-length hair and a bright smile. She wore casual clothes, jeans and a sweater, and looked healthy, happy even. It took Amanda a moment to recognize her own sister. That was taken 2 weeks ago, Holbrook said quietly, at my home in Lincoln Park. Amanda stared at the photograph. I don't understand. She's at your home? Are you saying you've been keeping her prisoner for 4 years? No, I'm saying she's been living with me for 4 years, not as a prisoner, as... Holbrook's voice broke. As someone I cared for, someone I tried to save. Michael felt confusion mixing with anger. You bought her from Derek Moss. The records show you paid $50,000 for permanent placement. I did, but not for the reason you think. Let me explain, and then you can judge whether you believe me. Holbrook set down his phone and clasped his hands together as if trying to hold himself steady. 4 years ago, a client brought me into a case, not a legal case, a situation. This client was involved in certain activities, trafficking. He needed someone to handle financial arrangements, to structure deals in ways that couldn't be traced. He knew I had expertise in corporate structures, shell companies. He offered me a great deal of money. And you said yes. I said yes. I told myself it was just paperwork, just money moving around. I told myself I wasn't actually hurting anyone. Classic rationalization. For 6 months, I handled transactions. I knew what the money was for, but I never saw the victims. I never had to confront what I was facilitating. Until Lisa, Amanda whispered. Until Lisa. My client, the man who'd hired me, decided he wanted to make a personal purchase. Someone young, educated, someone who could be molded. He asked me to handle the financial side of the transaction as usual, and then he asked me to pick her up from the weigh station, to verify the merchandise before final payment was transferred. Michael felt sick. He sent you to that building to evaluate Lisa like she was property. Yes, I drove to that address, that concrete building in the middle of nowhere. Derek Moss met me there, and he opened that door and I saw... Holbrook's voice cracked again. I saw a 19-year-old girl chained to a wall, terrified, traumatized, but still fighting, still defiant. Derek said she'd been difficult, that she needed to be broken before delivery. Those were his words, broken. And you let it happen, Amanda said, tears streaming down her face. No, yes, I'd already let it happen. I'd facilitated it. But standing there, looking at her, I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't hand her over to my client, knowing what he'd do to her. I couldn't walk away and pretend I was just moving money around. Holbrook looked directly at Amanda. So I called my client and told him the merchandise was damaged, unsuitable. And I told Derek Moss I'm buying her myself. Michael's mind raced. The permanent placement designation, that was you buying her instead of your client. Yes, I paid $50,000. I drove her to my house in Chicago, and I told her she could stay or she could leave. Her choice." Amanda stood abruptly. "You're lying. You're trying to make yourself sound like a savior when you're just as guilty as the rest of them." "I'm not trying to sound like a savior. I'm guilty of facilitating trafficking, of enabling monsters, of benefiting from the destruction of human lives. But I'm telling you the truth about Lisa." Holbrook picked up his phone again and pulled up another photo. "Here, this is from 6 months after she came to live with me." Another photograph of Lisa, this one showing her in what looked like a university setting, carrying textbooks, wearing a backpack. She wanted to go back to school. She'd been studying art before she was taken. I helped her enroll at Northwestern under a new identity. Got her a social security number, birth certificate, complete documentation. Legally, she's Jessica Hart now. She's been taking classes, working toward her degree. "A new identity," Michael repeated. "So she couldn't contact her family, couldn't let anyone know she was alive." "She chose that. I offered to help her reconnect with her family, but she refused. She said she couldn't face them, couldn't explain what had happened to her. The shame was too much." Amanda was sobbing now, her whole body shaking. "She's been alive this whole time, 20 miles from my mother's house, and we thought she was dead." "I'm sorry." Holbrook's voice was barely audible. "I told her she should reach out. I told her repeatedly over the years, but I couldn't force her, and I understood why she didn't want to. What Derek Moss did to her during those 3 days in that building changed her, broke something inside her that never fully healed." Michael put his arm around Amanda, holding her as she cried. His own mind struggled to process this revelation. Everything they thought they knew was wrong. Lisa wasn't dead. She wasn't suffering in some horrific situation. She was alive, safe, going to school, living under a false identity. "Why are you telling us this now?" Michael asked. "You could have kept this secret. Even with your life destroyed, you could have protected her privacy." "Because she deserves to make her own choice," Holbrook replied. "For 4 years, I've been making decisions for her, keeping her safe, keeping her hidden from her family because she was too traumatized to face them. But my life is over now. I'll be arrested, prosecuted, probably imprisoned. I can't protect her anymore. And she needs to know that her family never stopped looking for her, that her sister never stopped grieving." "You're manipulating us," Amanda said through her tears, "making yourself look noble when you're a trafficker. You facilitated the destruction of how many women, how many families?" "At least 30 that I know of, probably more." Holbrook's face was ashen. "I'm not noble. I'm a coward who facilitated evil for money and tried to buy redemption by saving one person. It doesn't balance out. It doesn't make me less guilty. But Lisa is still a person who deserves the truth and deserves a choice about her own life." Michael's transmitter felt heavy against his chest. Agent Vance was hearing all of this. She'd have protocols, procedures. She'd want to verify Holbrook's story, investigate his claims. "How do we know you're telling the truth?" Michael asked. "Show us proof, an address, phone number, something concrete." Holbrook pulled a business card from his wallet and wrote on the back, "That's her address. She lives in an apartment in Lincoln Park. I pay the rent, but it's in her name. Jessica Hart. She should be home today. Classes were canceled because, well, of everything that's happened." He paused. "She doesn't know I'm meeting you. She doesn't know the evidence was leaked. She probably doesn't even know yet that my name is all over the news." "She's going to find out," Amanda said. "Yes, and when she does, she'll realize the life I built for her is about to collapse. The false identity, the university enrollment, the apartment, all of it was held together by my money and influence. Money I won't have anymore. Influence, that's gone." He handed the card to Michael. Tell her I'm sorry for everything, and tell her that her family loves her, that they never stopped looking for her." A knock at the door made them all freeze. 3 sharp raps. "Michael? Amanda? Time to go." Agent Vance. Voice urgent. Michael stood, pocketing the business card. Amanda remained seated, staring at Holbrook with an expression of confused anguish.
Come on, Michael said gently, helping her up. They moved toward the door. Before Michael opened it, Holbrook spoke one last time. The remnant will come for me now. They used you to expose the network, and they used me to get you closer about Lisa, but I'm still guilty, still a trafficker, and they don't believe in legal justice. They believe in their own version of it. So this might be the last time anyone sees me alive.
Are you asking for help? Michael asked. No, I'm just stating a fact. Whatever happens to me, I deserve it, but Lisa doesn't deserve to lose her sister twice. So please, go to her. Tell her the truth. Give her the choice I should have given her 4 years ago. Michael opened the door. Agent Vance stood in the hallway, her expression tight with tension. We need to leave. Now. She glanced past them at Holbrook. Mr. Holbrook, I'm going to need you to come with me. I understand. Holbrook stood, accepting his fate with eerie calm. Vance looked at Michael and Amanda. You two go. Take the stairs. There are 3 suspicious individuals in the lobby who've been watching the elevators for the past 20 minutes. They're not law enforcement. The remnant, Michael realized, or someone else. Either way, dangerous. Go, Vance repeated. I'll handle Holbrook, get to Lisa, verify his story. If it's true, we'll figure out next steps. Michael and Amanda ran for the stairwell, their footsteps echoing in the concrete passage as they descended 8 floors. They emerged in the hotel's parking garage, breathless and disoriented. Michael pulled out the business card. An address in Lincoln Park, about 20 minutes away. We should call first, he said. Warn her we're coming. No, Amanda's voice was firm. She'll run or refuse to see us. We show up, we knock on her door, we make her face this. They drove in tense silence, through downtown traffic, into the residential neighborhoods of Lincoln Park. Old brownstones lined tree-lined streets, expensive cars parked along curbs. This was wealth, privilege, safety. The address Holbrook had given them was a modern apartment building, all glass and steel, with a doorman and security cameras. Amanda and Michael entered the lobby. We're here to see Jessica Hart, Unit 412. The doorman picked up a phone, dialed. Your name? Tell her Amanda Chen is here to see her. The doorman relayed the message, a long pause, then he hung up and nodded. She says to come up. They took the elevator to the 4th floor. Unit 412 was at the end of a carpeted hallway. The door was ajar. Amanda pushed it open. The apartment was small, but tastefully furnished. Art prints on the walls, bookshelves lined with textbooks and novels, a kitchen visible through an archway. And standing in the middle of the living room, wearing sweatpants and a university hoodie, was Lisa Chen. She looked just like her photographs, but older. Not just 4 years older, aged by trauma and survival. Her eyes met Amanda's across the room, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Then, Amanda crossed the distance between them and pulled her sister into an embrace so fierce it looked like she'd never let go. Lisa stood rigid for a moment, then collapsed into the hug, her own arms wrapping around Amanda, her body shaking with sobs she'd apparently been holding back for 4 years. Michael stayed by the door, giving them space. His own eyes stinging with tears, he tried to blink away. I'm sorry, Lisa kept saying, over and over. I'm so sorry. I couldn't come back. I couldn't face you. I couldn't. Shh. You're here. You're alive. That's all that matters. They sank to the floor together, still holding each other, still crying. Michael turned away, giving them privacy for a reunion 4 years in the making. He stepped out into the hallway and called Agent Vance. We found her, he said when she answered. Holbrook was telling the truth. Lisa's alive. She's here. Thank God. Vance sounded genuinely relieved. How is she? Traumatized, hidden, but alive and safe. Michael paused. What happens now? Now we have a complication. Lisa Chen is technically a missing person, but she's also living under a false identity created by a criminal. We'll need to sort out the legal issues, get her proper documentation, interview her about her experiences. Vance sighed. It's going to be messy. What about Holbrook? He's in custody, cooperating. We've already corroborated parts of his story through our own investigation. He's still guilty of trafficking facilitation, but his actions regarding Lisa complicate things. He might have saved her, but he's still responsible for the harm done to dozens of others. And the remnant? The people in the hotel lobby? Gone by the time I got downstairs with Holbrook. We're trying to identify them through security footage, but I'm not optimistic.
They're professionals. A pause. Michael, you did good work. You and Amanda both. You exposed the network, saved a girl, and brought Lisa home. That matters. It doesn't feel like enough. It never does, but it's something. And sometimes something is all we get. The call ended. Michael looked back into the apartment where Amanda and Lisa were still on the floor, talking quietly now, Lisa explaining in broken sentences what her life had been like for the past 4 years. Michael thought about the chain of events that had led here. A fake GPS coordinate, a hidden building, a choice to investigate instead of turn away, evidence leaked to the world, and now a family reunited. But the cost. Derek Moss was dead. Richard Holbrook's life was destroyed. Michael and Amanda were targets now, marked by dangerous people who might seek revenge. And Lisa would have to live with the knowledge that she'd been within a reach of her family the whole time, but had been too traumatized to come home. Nothing about this was clean. Nothing was purely good or purely just. But Lisa was alive, and after 4 years of uncertainty, that was something.
3 months later, Michael stood in the parking lot of Carson Logistics, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. His delivery van was parked in its usual spot, freshly serviced, GPS updated with legitimate routes. Everything had changed, and yet here he was, back to work, back to normal life. Or as normal as life could be after everything that had happened. The trafficking scandal had dominated news cycles for weeks. 24 arrests so far, with more expected. The state senator had resigned. The CEO had stepped down. Richard Holbrook had pleaded guilty to multiple charges and was awaiting sentencing. His cooperation had led to the dismantling of the entire network. Lisa Chen, now legally restored to her real identity, was living with Amanda in a new apartment they'd rented together. She was continuing her studies at Northwestern under her real name, seeing a therapist twice a week, slowly rebuilding relationships with family members who'd mourned her for 4 years. Her mother had collapsed when she first saw Lisa alive, cried for 3 hours straight. Now they had dinner together every Sunday, awkward and healing and real. Michael's phone buzzed, a text from Amanda. "Lisa wants to thank you in person. Dinner tonight?" He replied, "Absolutely. 7 p.m.? Perfect. Love you." Michael smiled and pocketed his phone. He grabbed his scanner and checked his delivery list for the day. 12 stops, all verified addresses, all within his normal territory. No mysteries, no fake coordinates, no hidden buildings waiting to be found. But he'd learned something from that night in December. The world was full of hidden things. Hidden evil, hidden suffering, hidden opportunities to make a difference. And sometimes ordinary people stumbled into extraordinary situations where they had to make impossible choices. He'd made his choice, leaked the evidence, exposed the network, put himself and Amanda at risk. And somehow they'd survived. The remnant had left them alone, perhaps because they'd served their purpose, or perhaps because exposing ordinary citizens who'd done the right thing didn't fit their agenda. Agent Vance had called them a week ago with news. The FBI had identified 3 members of the remnant, all former trafficking victims themselves, who decided that the legal system moved too slowly and punished too lightly. They'd taken justice into their own hands, creating situations that exposed traffickers in ways law enforcement couldn't. It was vigilantism, technically illegal, morally ambiguous, but it worked. The network was destroyed, girls were saved, and people like Michael, ordinary people, were given the tools to make a difference when the system failed. He didn't condone everything the remnant did. He didn't approve of their methods, but he understood why they existed. Sometimes justice required people willing to operate outside the rules, willing to take risks that institutions couldn't. Michael climbed into his van and started the engine. His first delivery was to an elementary school, art supplies for the teachers. His second was to a retirement home. His third was to a residential address in a nice suburban neighborhood. All routine, all normal. But as he drove, he paid attention in ways he never had before. He noticed details. He trusted his instincts. He didn't assume that everything was fine just because it looked fine on the surface. because he'd learned that evil hid in plain sight, that trafficking operations existed in ordinary buildings on ordinary streets, that powerful people could commit terrible crimes and never face consequences unless someone forced the truth into the light. And he'd learned that one person could make a difference, not because they were special or brave or particularly talented, but because they chose to act when action was needed, because they refused to look away when it would have been easier to pretend they hadn't seen anything. Sarah Chen, the girl he'd found in that concrete building, had sent him a letter last month. She was back with her family, in therapy, slowly recovering. She'd written, "You saved my life by being in the wrong place at the right time, or maybe it was the right place at the right time. Either way, thank you for not driving away when you could have." That letter was framed on Michael's desk at home, a reminder of why any of this had mattered. His GPS announced his first turn. Michael took it without hesitation, trusting the device again now that the case was closed, now that the people who'd manipulated his route were either arrested or vanished. But in the back of his mind, he stayed alert, because the remnant was still out there, because trafficking networks were still operating, because the world was still full of people who needed help and people willing to provide it, if only someone would give them the opportunity. Michael Torres was just a delivery driver. He had bad knees and a mortgage he could barely afford. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't special. But he'd proven that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when circumstances demanded it. That one person's choice to investigate, to care, to act, could ripple outward in ways impossible to predict. Lisa was alive because he'd followed those tire tracks into an abandoned lot. Sarah was free because he'd descended into that depression and knocked on that steel door. 24 traffickers were facing justice because he'd chosen to leak the evidence. And hundreds of potential victims would never be victimized because the network had been exposed and dismantled. All of this started with the delivery van and a GPS that lied.
Michael completed his first delivery at the elementary school, the teachers grateful for the supplies, oblivious to the fact that the delivery driver handing them boxes had been at the center of the biggest trafficking scandal in years. He preferred it that way. Anonymity, normalcy, the quiet satisfaction of knowing he'd made a difference without needing recognition or praise. As he drove to his second stop, his phone rang. Agent Vance. "Michael, I have news about Richard Holbrook." "What kind of news?" "He was attacked in jail last night. 3 inmates. He's in critical condition." Michael's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Is he going to survive?" "Unknown. But, Michael, the attackers weren't random. They were sent. Someone paid them to punish Holbrook, and we think it might be the remnant." "Why?" "He cooperated. He helped bring down the network." "Because in their eyes, he's still guilty. Saving Lisa doesn't erase the harm he caused, and they believe in a justice that's more absolute than what the courts can provide." Vance paused. "I'm telling you this because you need to stay vigilant. The remnant operates on their own code. If they decide you're a loose end or a liability, they might come for you too." "But we helped them. We did what they wanted." "You did, and you might be fine. But I need you to understand that these people don't think like we do. They've been traumatized, radicalized. They're fighting a war, and in war, allies can become casualties." The call ended with Vance's warning hanging in the air. Michael pulled over to the side of the road and sat for a moment, engine idling, thinking about everything that had happened and everything that might still happen. He could live in fear. He could spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, wondering if the remnant would decide he knew too much or had become a liability. Or he could live his life,
Do his job. Love Amanda. Support Lisa's recovery. Make each day matter. He chose the latter. Because fear was how people like the traffickers maintained power. Fear kept victims silent. Fear kept witnesses from coming forward. Fear allowed evil to operate unchecked. And Michael had learned that refusing to be controlled by fear was itself a form of resistance. He put the van back in drive and continued his route. At 6:55 that evening, Michael knocked on Amanda and Lisa's apartment door. Amanda answered, pulling him into a hug, then leading him inside where Lisa waited in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. "Hey, Michael," Lisa said, her voice still carrying hints of uncertainty but stronger than it had been months ago. "Hey, Lisa. Something smells amazing. Pasta. Nothing fancy, but it's edible." She smiled, a real smile, not forced or frightened. "I wanted to cook for you, to say thank you properly." They ate together, the three of them, talking about ordinary things. Amanda's job, Lisa's classes, Michael's delivery routes. No mention of trafficking or evidence or the remnant, just normal conversation, normal life, normal people enjoying a meal together. And in that normalcy, Michael found something profound. This was what he had fought for. Not glory or recognition, but this, the simple ability of people to live their lives without fear, without exploitation, without powerful predators destroying them for profit. After dinner, Lisa pulled out a painting she'd been working on, an abstract piece, all blues and greens, with hints of light breaking through darker colors. It's about emergence, coming out of darkness into something new. I'm calling it the delivery. Michael looked at the painting, at the way Lisa had captured the feeling of transformation, and felt his eyes sting with unexpected emotion. "It's beautiful," he said honestly. "You're the delivery driver who brought me back. Not from that building. Holbrook did that, for whatever complicated reasons. But you brought me back to my family. You made it possible for me to stop hiding. So thank you." Michael didn't know what to say. He'd just been doing what seemed right in the moment, following instincts he barely understood, making choices that terrified him. But maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all anyone could do. Face the moments when choices mattered and choose based on conscience rather than fear. "You're welcome," he said finally. "And for what it's worth, you're incredibly brave. What you survived, how you're rebuilding your life, that's harder than anything I did." Lisa nodded, accepting the acknowledgement. As Michael drove home that night, he thought about the painting's title, The Delivery. His GPS had lied, leading him to a place he wasn't supposed to find. But in doing so, it had delivered him to exactly where he needed to be, to a moment where one person's choice could change everything. The world was still full of darkness. Trafficking still existed. Evil still operated. But there were also people fighting back, some through legal channels, some through vigilante justice, and some simply by refusing to look away when they saw something wrong. Michael Torres was just a delivery driver, but he had learned that sometimes that was exactly what the world needed. Someone ordinary, in the wrong place at the right time, willing to make the hard choice. His GPS announced, "You have arrived at your destination." Michael pulled into his parking spot, killed the engine, and looked up at his apartment building. He was home. And somewhere in the city, other people were finding their way home too. Rescued from darkness, freed from captivity, given second chances at life. Because one delivery driver had followed his GPS to an address that didn't exist and decided to investigate what he found there. That was enough. That was everything.
The end.
Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss these. Just click to watch and don't forget to subscribe.